What's going on, guys and girls? It's your boy Captain Smoke, man, and welcome to Higher Learning Ep.2. First and foremost, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day or night to watch, Higher Learning Episode 1 on YouTube, or even listen on all DSPs, whether it's Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, you name it. I just, I really can't even put into words just what the support and all the comments and feedback meant to me. So if you're watching this or listening to it, again, I appreciate you. And also, if you're a first time listener, I highly suggest you go ahead and listen to episode 1 so you kind of just know the backstory of what we're getting into here on episode 2. But before I go any further, I do just want to mention this morning, or I should say this afternoon, when I was recording initially, or right before I was about to press record, I actually got the news. I got a text about Kobe passing away, and obviously I stopped everything and went to the news sources to see if it was true, and obviously at that time it had just happened, so information was flooding in, and basically over the course of like an hour it came out that his daughter passed away as well, which just, it was already a heartbreaking situation, but it's just that just obviously doubles it. And it really, I went ahead and continued to record, but I really just wanted to come back and redo this episode, just for the simple fact that I felt like it was a lot to process in the moment, and it really was kind of eerie just because of the topic that I was already planning on discussing. And right before I hit record, this news pops up. So before I actually get into today's topic, I do want to go ahead and take a memorial bowl for Kobe Bryant, his daughter, all the the pilots and the rest of the passengers on that helicopter, as well as all their families, because I know what it's like to lose somebody, but just for them to be in such a public eye, and probably who knows how they got the news, but it's just never going to be good. So anyway, I want to go ahead and pull out Big Bertha, my Helix bong, and take a rip. R.I.P. Kobe, R.I.P. To everybody that was on that helicopter. Of course, my lighter doesn't work. Sometimes you got to go old school. All right, so jumping right back into things, I actually plan to mention Kobe anyway in this speech, which is why it was so eerie and so, I don't know how to describe the feeling, but I just kind of felt sick because, like I said, I had already planned to mention Kobe, obviously in a different way in this this episode. And the way I was going to mention him, and I still am, because it's still very important to what I want to say. The best thing, in my opinion, that Kobe Bryant ever said, or I should put it like this: my favorite quote of Kobe Bryant's was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically he was explaining how he accomplished all these great feats. And his advice was just to break everything down into the smallest minute details, or the smallest minute task, and then completing those small tiny tasks one by one, and watching it combine into the overall huge task that looked impossible or daunting before. That's something that I've seen to be true, just starting, for example, this podcast. When you're listening to your favorite podcast, and the Joe Budden podcast of the world, you're thinking, hey, I want to do that too. but in a different way, different subject matter, stuff like that. It seems like such a huge task to create, first of all, the content to, and then format it in a way that people would enjoy watching or listening to, and then getting that on the platforms. Like, all of that seems like a very big task, or it did before actually getting into it. And, you know, just by using that method and breaking, you know, the procedure of starting a podcast down to the smallest detail, here I am today. And that's actually what I was going to say. And I was going to, you know, kind of use that into, basically use that and give it to you guys to apply to your everyday lives, you know, because we all have something we would want to do that we've been kind of putting off, or, you know, maybe later. But basically what I wanted to come in here and say is, the whole tragedy with my dad forced me to look at life differently, to where I'm not looking at it like, you know, my peers who feel, oh, you know, I'll just work for 40 years, then I'll figure out what figure it out from there. You know, that's kind of the plan, is just, you know, you operate kind of like you have an unlimited time frame. And basically today's message was, you know, we need to take control of our lives, because we don't have an unlimited time span. And that's been my perspective ever since, pretty much, those events. But this Kobe situation obviously just puts a exclamation mark on that. So basically, guys, if you don't take anything else from this episode, I just want you to know we really don't have enough time to, you know, sit around holding ourselves back in fear of what others may think of us, or what they might say, or how they might judge or perceive your situation. Like, we don't have time for that. We really just have to go after what it is we want in this life, because we don't know how much time we actually have. So, you know, looking at Kobe for one more second here. If you remember when he retired, most people wanted him to go coach the Lakers or be a GM or something. They had him in such a box because of what he had already done up to that point. And I feel like that's where a lot of us, you know, kind of get caught up in life. In a second, I'll tell you my story, as far as after school and all of that kind of stuff, what happened with me. But I feel like most of us can relate to that in some type of way. You know, you've been doing something for so long that people just assume you're happy, and they're happy for you or whatnot, and they expect you to just continue that. And you might have something totally different on your mind, or you just might not be happy with whatever the situation you're in is, whether that's a job or relationship or just anything, just your state of being, you know, the lifestyle you're living, whatever it is. I just feel like that's something many people struggle with. And maybe if you're not struggling with it now, you can understand it from something you went through in the past. So jumping right into my story, picking up where we left off pretty much at episode 1, I went straight into high school, like I said, after the whole event, you know, the whole unfolding of events with my dad or whatever. So have you guys ever been driving home from work, and, you know, you just pull up in your driveway, and then you just realized you're home, but you don't really recall driving home from work? You know, everything becomes automatic. You know, you just kind of switch into autopilot, and, you know, because it's something you do every day. I feel like I went through high school and college just kind of, and, you know, some time after that, just kind of like that, on autopilot, just kind of existing, I guess you could say. I was in a place where, you know, I did everything I thought I was supposed to do, as far as, you know, graduating high school, going to college, getting a job in my degree field, and, you know, advancing up the corporate ladder or whatever. That's just where I was at life. And I had did that at a young age. And so that prompted people, like I said, to be, you know, proud of me, or, you know, express their pride in what I was doing or whatever. And so that also made it hard to come to the realization that I really didn't enjoy what I was doing, because, I'm that kind of person to where, you know, I dive really deep into things just from the jump, just to see, you know, to see what they're really about, to see if this is something that, you know, is going to keep me, you know, keep a hold of me for a short time, or is it going to be something around for your entire life, you know? But anyway, after about 5 or 6 years of working at the restaurant and everything, like I said, I was pretty much at the point where I knew this isn't what I wanted to do with my life, from the standpoint of I'm looking at my colleagues. Like, so I've always been the type of person, you know, the analogy, you know, you pull your hand, or you put your hand in the fire and pull it back when it gets hurt. I was always the type of guy that, like, if I seen somebody else put their hand in the fire and get burnt, like, I don't need to test the fire for myself. Like, I'm good. I get it. So that's always the kind of person I've been. So when I'm looking at my colleagues who are, 10 years older than me and, with more experience in the place and higher up the ladder than I am at the time, I'm looking at their lives and their mental states, and many of them are miserable and stressed completely, all the way out to the point where they're yelling and screaming. And this is a open kitchen concept restaurant, guys, where the guests sitting out on the floor or looking into the kitchen. So I'm having my colleagues, my senior managers and stuff, flipping out in front of guests, basically just due to the stress of the environment and not really having a way out. So I knew that I didn't want that for myself. Now, a lot of you may be in a similar position, and maybe you can understand where I'm coming from. You've been at your job for 5, 6, maybe even 10 years at this point, and it's just kind of, you're good at it and it's comfortable, and you don't really know for sure what else it is you want to do. You just know that that's not what you want to do with the rest of your life. And to what I was saying earlier, my perspective changed that night after my dad died, because I'm looking at it like, okay, well, he was just standing here a second ago, so 10 seconds later, he's dead, right? And so I'm looking at that like, not only is tomorrow not promised, but the next minute's not promised. So every minute I spend in this restaurant knowing it's not what I want to do and it's not getting me towards what I want to do, I feel like I'm taking a moment away from living in what I'm supposed to be living in, living the life I want, living the life I'm supposed to be living. So basically, after struggling with that for a while longer, and other events unfolding, my brother in California, actually not my real brother, but I call him my brother because he's like my best friend, or was my best friend growing up, and we were like brothers because we, every day I was out there, we were together. So and him, my dad, and I, we all hung out, like, so we were like brothers. We all went fishing together, played video games, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, he ended up getting killed one day, and I got the news at work, and I didn't really take it well. But like I said, I always kept that cool, calm, and collected thing on. It was like a suit, a suit you put on, being cool, calm, and collected. You kind of zip it up, and then once you leave there, you can kind of unzip it and take it off and be yourself at home or whatever. But it was kind of hard to keep that up, finding that news out, because obviously this isn't going on where I'm at, is going on in California. And so obviously I didn't tell anybody what happened. I just kind of was dealing with it there, and ended up basically kind of going off on some people in a manager meeting, not like in a disrespectful way, but basically they were just trying to tell me about what they considered to be problems that we were having in the restaurant. So I kind of unloaded what my problems were, and they involved people dying and being killed next to me, and being shot in the head at gas stations and stuff like that. And you're talking to me about condiments and silverware. So basically that's one of the things that expedited. I didn't get fired or anything. I don't want you to think that. It wasn't that kind of explosion, but I just said what I wanted to say. I didn't say it in a disrespectful way. I just kind of politely let people know that. And I can't even remember if they gave me the day off. I doubt it, but it was just one of those things where I feel like the universe doesn't allow things to work out that aren't supposed to sometimes. Like something you want, like you could want a job to work out very well, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't. And it seems like it's not supposed to. And you don't really understand that or accept that until you figure out, until you get to the next spot and figure out where you're supposed to be. And then things start to make more sense. And basically, on that note, I want to fast forward a little bit because after leaving the restaurant, I took some time off to try to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in business for myself and that I would need money. So I ended up, becoming a contractor and going to Iraq. Now, if you guys remember, maybe a week ago, Iran bombed a few bases in Iraq. Well, in 2018, I was on one of those bases, Al-Assad. I was actually working on one of the bases that was hit with the ballistic missiles from Iran. So that was another situation that I felt like the universe wouldn't allow to work out for whatever reason. Like the craziest things were happening just to not keep me there, because it was really an ideal situation. I loved what I was doing as far as warehouse managing. And then at the end of my stay there, I was working with the Navy SEALs. So that was like an extra $50,000, not literally, but I'm just saying that was like an extra bonus for the job. It wasn't cash, but it was just how many people that aren't Navy SEALs can say they worked alongside Navy SEALs every day? Like not a lot of people can say that. So I really I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I really felt like I was a part of something bigger than myself, which would, is a good feeling or whatnot. But for whatever reason, it wouldn't work out. They wouldn't pay me, for my job title. I was hired on on an entry level, and then the day I got there, they promoted me to a cook, and then after that to warehouse. But the pay, they didn't promote my position with that. They just had me doing all these extra tasks and taking on this extra responsibility. I was like a warehouse lead. I had people under me and everything, and they just kept kind of leading me on as far as when the promotion and back pay and all of that crap was coming. But of course, it never did. And that whole situation, like I said, with the universe, as I was getting on a plane, or as I was getting ready to head back to the airport to get back on a plane to go back to Iraq, there was a problem with the whole visa. There was an issue with my entry visa going back there. So luckily, I checked my email at the last minute. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that, and possibly have gotten all the way to Baghdad. And whatever visa I needed to actually get inside the country from Baghdad, apparently it wouldn't have been valid. They wouldn't have accepted it, or I don't know. I don't really remember, but it just made me lose the last shred of confidence I had of working out there, especially when your life's on the line the way it is, in the war zone. So once again, that's why I felt like, okay, I really need to take control of my life, because I'm getting all these signs and all these things aren't working out. So I need to actively seek out what it is that I need to be doing so it can work out. So let's say you're in a similar position as I was, and I'm still working through now, because obviously I'm not in that where I want to be in life right now. I'm part of this podcast is you seeing that process unfold before your eyes as we build this platform together. It's about where we want to go. And so that's really my advice, or a piece of my advice to somebody who says they want to take control of, their lives. Because one of the things that I really didn't like, or one of the things that really triggered me about my job as a restaurant manager, is we used to have to plan our schedule. Our schedules were planned a month at a time, right? So I remember, because my birthday's in August, so I remember my dad died in June. So we were planning this huge birthday party in August, and we were looking, a month or two. We were looking basically 2 months down the line. And, that's where the whole tomorrow's never promised, the next hour is not promised, the next minute is not promised. So I always kind of thought about that as I was filling out my life for a month. What if I don't even live to see this? But yeah, so I'm not saying just abandon schedules or anything like that, but I do think the first step, well, first of all, wait, before we dive deep into these steps, let's just get a couple things understood. Number one, this isn't some type of overnight process that I'm trying to tell you about. This is something that is a lifetime process, honestly, especially after dealing with trauma. If you're one of the millions of people out there dealing with trauma that no one knows about, and you're just trying to function through everyday life, Like you already know that it's a process just trying to make it through each and every day. So feeling better inside for real and not just what you're showing on the outside, that's never going to be easy. It's never going to be an overnight process. So basically what I'm proposing is we do it together. And these are some of the steps that I've been, kind of working with throughout my life or since those times. But the number one thing you need to realize, besides that it won't be an overnight process, is also that it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly. So imagine from the outside looking in how people, like, actually probably you watching this right now, you're probably one of these people, a family member, a loved one who's on the outside looking in, not knowing what's going on inside my head or whatever. But you probably were one of the people that was happy for me working at the manager, as a restaurant manager, and thinking I was happy doing that and all of that kind of stuff. And then so when I quit and, go on my journey to find other things, end up in Iraq, all of this stuff, that's not something that looks pretty. It doesn't look like you have it all figured out. And that's what people really need to understand. Most people that you look at and think, oh, they have all their shit together, they have all their ducks in a row. They don't. And that's the game, because see, the thing is, we live in a real like Instagram culture where, people only really paint the pictures they want you to see. Not too many people are going to really just open up and tell you or show you the real what's going on, in their lives, in their minds. So whatever it is you're comparing yourself to on Instagram, you got to realize you're not comparing yourself to reality 9.9 times out of 10. Actually, I would just venture to say 10 times out of 10, because nobody's going to put every single thing on Instagram, especially the negative sides of things, the insecurities, the, not feeling safe, the just depression, anxiety, like all of that stuff, even though those things are becoming trendy for people to kind of talk about. And, it is what it is. So don't worry so much about the outward image. Worry about the actual work being done. Worry about actually getting better, actually accomplishing whatever it is you want to accomplish versus how it looks to other people. Because I feel like that's where we go wrong with our lives. Like, I mean, look at high school, right? High school is this place full of these pressures. Like, there's pressures from all directions, pressures from your teachers to pass the classes, like pressure from your parents to do well in, school or whatever, and go to college and, be better than them or whatever. And, college, pressure from your peers as far as, the little cliques of groups, the jocks, the preps, or, all of that stuff, man. And these are all kids that are trying to figure themselves out too. And on top of that, you tell them, when they graduate, they need to figure out, or they need to know what it is they plan to do with the rest of their lives, and, sign up for a couple $100,000 in loans to, fund that. It's crazy how it works. Like, how many people did you go to school with that said they wanted to be anesthesiologists, right? Like, most of them couldn't even really pronounce that. Like, none of them could spell it really, but it sounded great. And everybody knows they make a lot of money. So people feel like, okay, well, my life will be great if I'm this. Now, how many of those people actually, it would be interesting to figure out how many people actually stuck with that, or how many people found something they, actually enjoyed and wanted to do more so than make money, I'm sure, there's a lot of happy anesthesiologists in there, their foreign, I was going to say supercars or something, Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all of the fancy stuff. But I wonder how many of those guys really just, how many of those people really just wanted to be veterinarians and, play with animals, not play with animals, because I'm not saying veterinarians only play with animals, but just help animals all day, like be around animals, because that's not really something that you consider a massive money-making job, but you could see how that would be more fulfilling to an animal lover than putting people to sleep for a living. But I think what it all really boils down to is getting to know the new you. And what I mean by that is like the you after the trauma, right? So whatever it is you went through, you got to understand that you're no longer the same person. And, you kind of have to, well, no, you definitely have to really get to know this new person, because I think what happens a lot of times is we are these new people. We do have these different thoughts. We do feel differently. We look at the world completely differently, but we try to force ourselves to be as close to the old us as possible for the benefit of others. And really, I mean, sometimes for the benefit of ourselves, because we don't want to think about these things, or we don't want to process these things, or feel the feelings that we know are attached to these things. So we push it back, or try to ignore it, bottle it up until it comes spiraling out in some way we didn't intend to. But you have to acknowledge that. You have to acknowledge that trauma, and acknowledge that you're a new person, and figure out who that is. And, you know, even if you don't like that person, there's always self-actualization and realizing your highest self. And that's what, you know, higher learning is all about, right? So, the deeper you go, the better, guys. That's why, I'm a real big proponent of cannabis, self-medication, because it helps you take down those walls that we build up in our brain to, you know, block certain thoughts off. You know, we like to compartmentalize things a lot, especially in a sense of like trauma. We like to put that off to the side so we can go on with everyday life and blend into society. And that's really doing more harm than it is helping us. So like I said, guys, we just got to acknowledge that, and try to work through it as best as we can, and just live with it, really, because you're never going to get over it. It's never going to go away, and you're never just going to go back to being the same person. So you have to address that, acknowledge it, and have that in the forefront of, you know, who you are. You have to own that and turn it into something positive, I guess. That's what I'm doing. But that's how I would describe it. Maybe that wasn't the best explanation, but I tried. I tried. So adding on to that, kind of the most important thing, everything's the most important thing, guys. Honestly, I keep saying the most important thing or first thing, but all of these things are very important, you know. But be real with yourself, though. And that's a big one, for the simple fact that I was lying to myself about how I felt about a lot of things for a lot of years. And one thing that I never, I'm not going to say never, but I hardly ever talked about, I can only remember talking about it once with like my mom, maybe. But I was really angry at my dad for, you know, not being some superhuman or being invincible or something like I might have thought he was as a child. And I was angry for things that were probably out of his control, and just, you know, not really feeling sorry for myself. But I knew that wasn't the right thing. I knew that was like wrong, more or less. Not necessarily wrong to feel it because it was natural, but just that wasn't fair to feel that way. So I kind of suppressed that for a long time. Among other things, but that's the number one thing I can think of off the top of my head. And like I said, self-medicating really just helped me take down those walls to the point where I couldn't push those thoughts back. I had to deal with them. I had to face them and accept that, and kind of, you know, give those thoughts time to breathe and time to mature, and, you know, just kind of letting it go. Because, I mean, it you know, that's a pretty childish thought, but at the same time I was a child. So you have to acknowledge those things before you can really move forward, because other than that, you're not really moving forward. So going back to the restaurant for a quick second, I felt like a lot of the reason why my colleagues were very unhappy with their situation is simply because they had built this entire life on a foundation they weren't happy with. So that's basically what we're discussing right now, as far as taking control of your life, is really just stripping everything down to the foundation and getting that right, and then rebuilding everything on top of that. So what does that look like? I guess you could say some of us, for example, like for me, when I left, let me just use myself as an example, because that's the easiest thing to do. When I left the restaurant, it was easy for me to do because, you know, I'm not married. I don't have any kids, anything like that. So what I had built on top of that foundation was relatively small compared to my colleagues who are married with families, and they're locked into this thing. Like, unless there's another opportunity that they can start today, there's no way they can, get away from their current situation. And so that's where a lot of that anger was coming from. And a lot of you guys can probably relate to that situation. You may have an entire family depending on the job that you hate. So you really don't have an option to, just leave and find your second wind in life. But the reality is we're in a different era as far as what's, just what's possible from home or from anywhere really with your phone. And so I think that gives people a lot more hope than they might have once had as far as a career change, because there was a time where a career change would have required you to stop everything and go back to school and get a degree. And now we're looking at times where you really don't need a degree in the first place to be successful, especially with all the, online opportunities. They're pretty much endless. And another reason I think people are really unhappy in life, and I touched on this before with the Instagram culture, but, they've built this house on that foundation that's meant to look good on the outside, but they haven't really paid much attention to the interior. How many people do you know who are struggling? Like they make good money, but they're struggling because they're doing the absolute most they can to impress people who don't even really like them. So for example, the single person who has the 10-bedroom home with 3 cars, and can barely, is barely making it. And obviously that's an exaggeration, but I'm just saying, we all know the people who live above their means. That old saying, live below your means, or live above your means, live under a bridge, or something like that. It goes something like that. Basically, if you live over your means, you'll end up with nothing. And we see a lot of that, sadly. And I just have to feel like that's for other people. It's for the show. Instead of the people, like if you look at a Bill Gates, how many pictures have you seen of him in public? He's not dressing to impress anybody. He is who he is already. So that's what it is, guys. Don't do so much to impress other people. Just do things to make you happy and get you to where you want to go in life. And that really goes back to what Kobe Bryant was saying about breaking everything down into the smallest detail possible. Because that would be my next tip, is really don't be controlled by the status quo. That's basically what I was just talking about. But also on top of that, you really have to figure out where it is you want to go. Like, what is it you want to do? Where is it you want to be? Like, that's what took me the most time, I guess you could say. Because once you figure it out, it's easier. Once you figure that out, then you have the ability to make that map we're talking about, the Mamba map, let's call it. Breaking everything down into the smallest details. Like I gave the analogy of the podcast earlier. Same thing. But you have to know where you want to go before you can build that roadmap. So that's really the most important thing. And then just start executing those steps one by one until they're all finished. I mean, that makes everything seem so much more doable. And it really is. So I already spoke about being, how important it is to just be real with yourself about how you feel about things and really give your thoughts time to mature. And so once you get to a certain level with that, I think that's when you should go ahead and really share that with people you love or care about, or anybody. Really just put yourself out there, put it out there, and let people know who you are. And, you could be surprised with the reaction you may get. Like a lot of people will surprise you. You'll open up and tell them about yourselves, and that really might be the missing link in y'all's relationship. That really might be what makes everything click as far as them understanding you more as a person, the real you. And it's really nothing better than just being yourself and having your friendships, relationships with, friends and family, all of that stuff just working out perfectly. I mean, it's never going to work out perfectly, but the bottom line is the only real relationships are the ones where you can be yourselves, regardless of who they're with or whatever. All right, guys. So after all of that, this is the main focus of the day. Now, I already told you, if you don't take anything else from this episode, I know, but if you're still listening at this point, you've made it to I guess you could, if you want to call it a slogan, you can, but we've all heard this before. Control what you can control. It's simple, but it's true. And so why do I say that? I mean, there's so many things people try to control. People try to control other people. I mean, people try to control the weather nowadays. Like, it's crazy. But once you control what you can control to the best of your ability, you'll find life being a lot more or a lot less stressful. I was going to say a lot more stress-free. Same thing. So let's talk about some of the things that you could control to potentially make your life better. So number one, I kind of already touched on this. Obviously you can't change other people. You can't control others. You can only control yourself. Now, I'm not saying you should change yourself to fit with other people, unless that's something that's necessary on your path. Like if you're hanging out, like if you meet some mentors, a group of mentors, and they're where you want to be in life, and you need to change a lot of things about yourself because you want to be like they are where you want to be. And so you're learning the things you need to do and change within yourself to get to where you want to be, then obviously you need to do that. But there's also people that would have you change yourself in a negative way. And that brings me to the point of controlling your energy and availability. So this is a huge one because we only have 24 hours in a day, right? You look at 8 hours a day for work generally. Depending on, what city you live in and how far away you live from where you work, you're looking at a commute of, whatever your commute is, but let's just give it about an hour. That's already 9 hours gone. When I was working, the big thing was, number one, I was always the closing manager because I was young or whatever. And they were like, okay, well, you don't have a family. So like, screw you, I guess. But, everybody, if you've ever worked in the restaurant industry, generally there's a bar everybody goes to at the end of the shift. So a lot of people spent a lot of money every night at said bar. And, that caused people to be further away from their goals, where they want to be. Now, I wasn't one of those people because I was the guy that would rather just come home and smoke a joint and watch anime by myself instead of spending, another couple hours with the crew I just got done working a 10-hour shift with. But that's just me. But like I said, controlling what you can control. There's certain situations, certain people, certain things you're going to have to cut out or limit in order to get to where you want to go. And that's just the reality of the situation. People can take it however they want to take it. But at the end of the day, if they're not helping you move towards where you're trying to go, what are they doing? And so you just got to control that. There's certain people in your life that can turn your whole mood upside down or, call your phone and, just weigh you down with unnecessary stuff. Control that. Don't allow them to do that. There's not a lot of things we can control, but the things we can, we need to. And I think the most important thing you can control is probably your perspective, just how you're looking at things in life. For example, how many people do you know that are late to work and blame traffic? Meaning that, you left the crib at 8:45, knowing you work 30 minutes away and you got to be there by 9, but your excuse to why you're late is traffic. And some of these people really believe that. Instead of giving themselves an hour to get to work, they gave themselves 15 minutes on a 30-minute trip and they're blaming traffic. So it's just simple perspective things, man, how you're looking at each situation you're in and, how you approach problems, are you going to blame somebody or are you going to get a solution? it is what it is. And really, I find that your perspective is what really makes or breaks you in a lot of situations. And then the other thing you can control is, another thing is what I meant to say. Another thing you can control is what people know and what people have access to. You got to understand that everybody doesn't need to know everything. You got to understand that not everybody wants you to do well. Not everybody wants you to be doing better than them. So, and I'm really big on energy, so you can take this with a grain of salt if you're not really into energy like I am. But, from my first story about the energy and gut feelings, like I don't go against that ever since that day. So, people will like put negative energy on your ideas, on your hopes, on your aspirations. So I find it better not to share them with people unless, you really just want to. But I'm more of the type of person now, like, for example, with my podcast, like I told a few people when I was thinking about the ideas and putting it all together and everything. And, it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. Not saying any of them didn't want me to do well, but I would never tell somebody I didn't think wanted me to do well, anything. But for the majority of people on my Facebook list, friends and family, they had no idea I was starting a podcast. I just dropped it, hit them with a link, and then they have the option to support it or not. But the ball's already moving. I'm not talking about what I'm going to do. I'm just showing you what I've done. And so I think a lot of people would benefit from just moving like that, because they wouldn't have all this negative energy clouding whatever it is they're trying to do and really not even knowing that that's what's going on. And another thing I wanted to say is basically just, and this is just another part of controlling your perspective, but don't get discouraged about things. Just start looking at things differently. So for example, we all know people, or maybe we're, the people that have had a New Year's resolution for the past 5 years to start working out more, or start working out, period, lose weight, whatever it is. We all know those people, and a lot of us are those people. And if that's you, you know what? That's okay. There's nothing in the rule book that says because that's you, this can't actually be the year you actually follow through with your goals and aspirations. But at the same time, you kind of have to understand where the other people are coming from, because you've already shared this idea with them so many times and they haven't seen anything from it. So you can't really expect them to just full on support you like that. So basically what I'm saying is, don't take that the wrong way if you even decide to share it. My whole point is just go out, go to the gym, work out, like do things that like control what you can control. You can control what you eat. You can control how much work you're putting in the gym, what you're doing to hit this goal. And as long as you continue to do that, the results will be there. And everybody will see it. Like you'll be able to take those selfies, the side by sides, the before and afters, all of that good stuff, and you'll be good, man. And really the last thing I want to say on this particular subject is just everything and everyone isn't for you, and that's okay. That's something people got to understand. Some of you, there's a lot of you that might be out there forcing relationships right now, whether it's with friends or significant others. Family is a huge one. Family is probably the biggest one that people try to force because, you feel like you have to deal with your family. I'm really not one of those people. I don't feel like I have to deal with anybody except my mom. That's like probably the one person I would always deal with no matter what. Or if I have kids, obviously there's nothing like my kids could do to make me not deal with them or whatever. But other than that, it's just like, don't feel obligated to deal with people that aren't treating you how you feel like you need to be treated. You have to demand you have to basically train people how to treat you. If you let somebody do you a certain type of way constantly, you can't just expect them to not do that at a certain point. You just remove yourself from that situation. And if later on down the line, they do get another chance to be back in your life, they're more than likely, if they intend on keeping you there, they're less likely to commit those same things. And if they do, then just remove them permanently. It is what it is. It's cool to take breaks from people. It's cool to take breaks from family members. It's cool to take breaks from organizations, groups, friends, whatever. Just, you have to take some you time and get you on the right track before you try to make everybody else happy. Because like I said, we really don't know how much time we have left, on this earth. We don't know at all. But yeah, guys, to sum everything all the way up, control what you can control and just really get to know yourself on a deeper level. Take some you time. You know, if you got to call into work on a mental health tip, just do it. Like, don't even feel bad about it. Just do it. And don't feel bad about, you know, canceling or not going to baby showers or, you know, friends events, whatever it is. Like, you don't have to be everything to everybody all the time. Like, sometimes you need to just focus on you and do what you want to do. And remember, when you have a plan, when you figure out where it is you want to go, make that plan and form it in the smallest details possible so you can just complete those one by one and knock those out. So that's how I'm approaching my life, guys. These are just some tips, some things that I'm taking in because I'm hoping we can grow as a community together. You know, we all came together because we have you know, common thread as far as not even necessarily. There's some people that are listening to this right now, you know, maybe you didn't, you know, maybe we didn't have like a similar experience or whatever, but you can relate to feeling like, you know, you're at a place, whether it's with your job or, like I said, relationship or just anything where you feel stuck and you just want to move on and just move to a new place, but you just, you know, you feeling bogged down and trapped. You know, we can all relate to that. So, really, guys, I think these steps are a good starting point, really. And once again, I think just with the events happening today, the way they did with Kobe and everybody on that helicopter, I think that really just puts an exclamation point on the fact that we really don't have the time to worry about what others are thinking about us or the decisions we make, and we really just have to go for what we want in life, especially right now because things are wide open as far as the possibilities, man. So anyway, if you made it to this point, I really appreciate you watching all the way through or listening all the way through. Some of you have been hitting me up about how to support the podcast. I have a few things in the works. Hopefully by next episode, I'll be able to give you more details on that. But I do have a Patreon set up as well as a Cash App. I'll link those in the description for the people that insist on definitely going the extra mile for supporting the platform. I highly appreciate that. But also just appreciate the normal support of you just listening or watching. I definitely appreciate that more than you can even imagine. But if you want to take it a step further, sharing the podcast on the platform would be great. Some of these Podchaser, I believe, has rating systems. You can do all that stuff. All right, but anyway, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to Higher Learning episode 2. Can't wait to see you next Tuesday for episode 3. Smoke out.